Good morning, everyone. For today, I'm going to talk about language shift and death, and this is Mia Hamili Humalan, BS Ed English major, second year. So, first, I'm going to start the main causes of language shift and death. So, first one will be fewer speaker. Second is the population movement, or it also can be demographic pressure and the number of speaker. So fewer speaker or number of speaker definitely affects or mainly be a part of the causes of language shift and death, because the smaller or the fewer people speak the language, it leads to shifting to another language or making the language dead. And of course, the population movement, as you move region to region, country to country, places to places, you need to know what is the language being used in that specific place you've transferred. So it leads to transfer, language shift. And then next is the demographic pressure, just like what I've told in population movement. It's just like when you move to another place or in other country, you need to learn the language that being used there for you to communicate with the people there. So it either you shift or either you abandon, or just like your language will be dead because you will not be able to use it because no one will understand you because you are living in other country or in other region. So what is language shift? When I first heard this lesson, I was also appalled because language shift and death. So I was kind of confused. So language shift is when the language displaces. It is when you abandon and shift your language, but it can happen rapidly or slowly. So to sum it all, language shift is when the language is not usually used already. Like into, you use a language, but you learn a new language, so you will shift to use that for betterment, for better communication to the people that you are communicating with, or to communicate with the community itself. So of course, if there is language shift, there are factors that affects language shift. So these are the four factors that affect language shift. So I hope you can see it on your screen. The first one is demographic. Second is attitude or value, economic, and political and social factor. So the first one is demographic factor, just like what I've said from the very beginning. Moving to a region or another country, main cause or may one of the great causes of language shift, because when you learn, just like for example, I'll give you an example. The Gaelic language in Scotland, they transferred into English because we all know that English is the universal language. Using the English language, we are able to communicate other people, other countries. So the Gaelic um, language in Scotland was being shifted or abandoned by the people. So they are using, they're currently using, they're currently using the English language is the moment. The second is the attitude or value. Of course, it is when there is a negativity in you in your inner self towards your language. It is when, like, basically it always happen ethnic, when they won't showcase their language, their unique language, and then they will use other language for them to blend in. And the next one would be the economic. Economic is when you encourage language decline. So I'm sorry, excuse me. So most economic factor may lead to bilingualism, and when you are a bilingualism, it's either you forget the other one or you maintain it, just like subtractive and additive language. So it is kind of advantage if it is an additive, like you mastered two languages. But if it is subtractive, it is kind of disadvantage, especially to mother tongue when you are learning new language. Because because in subtractive, instead of mastering both languages, the your mother tongue will be less mastered because you are more focused on the new language you are currently learning. So it always happens in bilingualism. So that is economic factor. The last one, I'm sorry. The last one will be political and social factor. So political and social factor, of course, it usually happen in multilingual country. So political factor usually the government or the country itself will choose one lingua franca to use to unify the people in communicating in their country. And in social factor, it is when most communities considered another language in monolingual society that is dominated by one group. So is there any question? Is there any confusion, misconceptions, misunderstandings? So please do ask me. None so far? Okay, I'll go to the next lesson. So just like I've said, language shift, and next one will be language death. What is language death? So I hope you will learn something upon this lesson. So language that is no longer spoken. It is when the community or that certain group is the only group or community in the world to use this specific language and it ceases to exist. So it is used when one or a community uses that language is the only remaining. So let's I'll give you a example. So how about in Chavacano? So Chavacano, I think I'm not quite familiar, but I think most speaker or fluent speaker of Chavacano is currently living or residing in Zamboanga City. So most people there spoke Chavacano, but if only if they won't pass it down to their generation to generation, the Chavacano language might cease to exist or might be extinct. So, types of language death. So, what are the types of language death? So, there are four types of language death: the gradual, sudden, radical, and bottom to top death. So, gradual replacement of a language, it involves a placement of one language by another. So just like what I gave an example a while ago, the Gaelic language in Scotland, it was replaced by English language. So the language Gaelic is automatically dead. And next is the sudden death. It is an extinction of a language. It's just like suddenly the language ceases to exist. People don't know how to speak or to use the language. And the radical death is when the community stops speaking the language. So I'll give you an example. I've actually searched it on the internet. So an example is when after the massacre of thousands of Indians in El Salvador in 1932, Cacao and Lensha language ceases to exist because people are scared or people are afraid to use the language. So that is why the language ceases to exist or doesn't, you seldom see people or don't see people speak the Cacao and Lensha languages. So bottom to top, that is the language ceases to be used in conversations. So it is when you don't use a certain language in conversing people. It is when, like for example, I don't know how to pronounce this, but is it Tiazlatal or Tiazdelzal? So I can't really pronounce it properly, but it is spelled as Tzeltal. So it is part of it is a language that is not being used in conversing because not all people able to understand it. So that is why it is considered as language death. But there is a but in language death. So in language death, you can still rebirth it, or you can still you can still let me find the perfect term for it. Showcase the language in folk song or in folklores. It depends on the ethnic or in the country itself. It depends on them how to showcase or how to preserve their language, so to avoid language death. I think that's all. So this is me, Amor Hamili Humalan, as an English major, second year. Thank you for listening, and I will leave you a simple quote from Aristotle, and that is, roots are bitter, but the fruit is sweet, especially this pandemic. So I am very, I definitely relate with you, to my co-students, to my seniors, juniors, and to my teachers. That is very hard to communicate, to do the lessons online. But I do hope that students will do their part as their teacher do their part, because it is hard to balance thing when only one side is balancing, not the two sides. So I hope you did enjoy and learn something from my lesson, and that is language shift and depth. So if there is any question, please do ask. None so far. Okay, thank you. I do hope you understand, and I hope you will learn, you will be more determined, and you will be encouraged, motivated to learn English language more, because as you all know, English is very useful nowadays. Thank you. This is Mia Mohamili Himalan. Once again, I hope you enjoy your day.